Welcome to the Mindset Architect Podcast, where it's all about creating the life you want, the business you want, and making a real difference. Join us in unlocking the code to true success. And now your host, Tony Caliendo, Master Coach with Rethink Coaching.
Welcome to the Mindset Architect Podcast, episode number 134. I'm Tony Caliendo, Executive Coach here at Rethink Coaching. And as always, I just want to take a minute and thank you for sharing your time with me. Time truly is our greatest asset, and the fact that you're willing to share your time with me truly does mean a great deal. I want to hop into today's topic about being stuck. And I know I've talked a little bit about this in the past, yet I'm experiencing right now with clients that I'm coaching across the country, from executive level to entrepreneurs to people who are just desiring a bigger life, that there is a frustration that grows around the feeling of being stuck. And what I have come to realize is that we're really not stuck. It's just the label that we've given things. And that label carries a lot of weight. It can be the definition that you start living into for no real reason other than it is a label that we have borrowed to use at a time when we feel like we're not moving forward. And, there's that old saying, right? Energy goes where attention flows. And I will tell you that for me, if I'm giving a ton of attention to being stuck, that's where my energy is going to go. And I'm going to continue to feel or become actually stuck. I want to talk about that today because I think it's really important as we're moving into Q2. Most of us are already selling in Q2 if you're in a sales position. However, from a normal calendar perspective, we're going to be moving into Q2 here pretty quick with the onset of April 1st. The first thing I want to talk about is being stuck is really a signal, not a state. And I think that's really important to really reframe or consider as we're moving forward. If you've ever had that feeling of being stuck, it's really quite challenging because we start to believe it. We start to believe into that. And it's really just a signal if you allow it to be, versus allowing it to become the state in which you are living in, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm stuck, and you become stuck. Feeling stuck is really just feedback. The moment that I feel like I am stuck, I take a step back and I think, okay, what's the feedback? What's the lesson here? What is going on? And I become an observer. I step out of doing whatever the activity is in, whether it's writing the book, whether it's writing content for the coaching company, whether it's coaching a client and a team. I just take a step back out of the doing and I look at it as feedback. It's not failure. What's really happening here? I want to pay attention to the signal that I'm getting. It's just a signal. It's just feedback. You might find yourself interpreting that you're stuck as that something's wrong with you. And I think we go there right away. And because we want to say, okay, something's wrong, it's me, everybody else is doing great, or things should be going well and they're just not. And I'm going to invite you to reframe that instead of saying something is wrong with me, to say something's off. And it changes the power, right? Because the other one, it becomes very internal. Something is wrong with me becomes very internal. But if we just flip it around and say, you know what, something's off, that allows your brain to think differently. It goes outside of you immediately to start looking at what is the thing that's off. Stuck often means that there's a misalignment between what you're doing and what actually matters. We've talked about this a bit, right? With doing the right more activities versus doing the wrong more activities. And that matters. If there's a misalignment and we're doing things that really are not either part of our plan or that have been proven not to work, there's a misalignment. What I know to be true is most of us that are high performers aren't stuck because we lack ability. And that's not the truth, right? We have the skill set and we've got history to prove it. Yet sometimes we fall prey to that thought of it's my ability, right? A lot of the time we get stuck because we've overextended ourselves or we've misdirected our attention and our energy. We're paying attention to things that don't matter. We're starting to look at things differently, yet we're picking the things that maybe we've done in the past that worked really well, looking for a quick win, yet it's not the win that we need to keep moving forward. It's just a dopamine hit. It's just a release that we did something that was great, yet it may not be the something that we need to move forward. What I'm going to ask you to do is to shift from judgment, right? That statement of something is wrong with me is very much a judgment statement, and shift into curiosity. What is this trying to show me? And that's that something is off statement to make, and asking yourself the follow up of what is this trying to show me? Really, really important for us to embrace that stuck is a signal, not a state. Do not allow it to become the state in which you operate in. Otherwise, you are going to get in that category, and you're going to, again, have a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that you are stuck when you're really not. Just a signal. The number two thing that could be causing it, and this happens often, is internal noise is drowning out your clarity. Too many thoughts, options, expectations without a clear direction can be causing issues. Busyness creates the illusion of progress while it's really just creating confusion. That's not going and doing something that you feel good about doing, even though it's not a task that you should be doing or that's actually moving you forward, but it's maybe a task that you've done a million times that you can feel really good about yourself that you were able to complete it. Conflicting identities. This is an important one. Who you were versus who you're becoming. I know for myself, so I've talked about this a little bit. There's more information to come. When I made the decision to write a book, who I was versus who I was becoming was significantly different. Significantly different. I never was an author before. Yes, I've written coaching programs. Yes, I've participated in helping write content for other people. Yet I'd never written a book. I'd never really seen myself as an author. And it probably wasn't until I was 4 chapters in that I allowed myself to embrace the thought of who I was becoming. I was becoming an author. And I had an amazing agent who helped me understand that after I had submitted a couple chapters to him. He stopped me. He goes, I don't think you're absorbing the fact that you're talented and what you're doing is working. And that was a moment for me to pause and really take in who was I becoming? Wasn't leaving behind my skills and my responsibilities as a coach. I wasn't leaving behind the other responsibilities that I have as a human being. I was evolving in an area into something else. And that had to be embraced. Otherwise, you show up with that imposter syndrome. You show up, you're like, well, I'm writing a book, but I'm really not an author. The second you decide to write a book, you become an author. And so paying attention to who you are becoming is really, really important because that's your new identity. And if we're going to move forward towards that goal, we have to embrace the new identity that we're going to have, even if you're doing the same position or same job. So for me, as a coach, when I moved from coaching to executive coaching, when I moved from traditional coaching to project coaching, my identity changed. I was embracing a different path when I decided to do more project coaching. So a client can hire me for a 90-day time period and we work on one thing. That's a different identity than having a client hire me and being their coach for 10, 12, 14 years, which I'm very fortunate. I have clients that fall in that category. So get your identity correct because it will impact your ability to move forward. That identity is really, really important. The other thing that can keep you feeling stuck is what if I fail? What if I do this and I publicly fall on my face? That can create us to pull back on taking action or taking the right action and really self-sabotage ourselves and create the feeling of being stuck. The other thing to keep in mind about the noise, right, is don't be attached to an outdated version of success. We've talked about this in a previous podcast episode where it's really important that you define your definition of success. I think I shared with you that when I left the coaching company that I was with, I had 42 clients. And when I started Rethink, I had 10. And I was judging my definition of success based upon what the other coaching company did. And as soon as I redefined my success, the noise went away. And I started attracting the right clients into my world. So pay attention. That is the third thing that can happen If you don't create the latest version of yourself in your definition of success, you can get stuck. Had I sat and held on to the fact that I had, I think it was 10 clients when I started Rethink Coaching, and stayed in the space that you weren't successful unless you had 35 or more, because that was really kind of the barometer of that company. And I had 42 or 43 at the time. If I would have held on to that, that would have held me back, because all I would have been focused on was I wasn't successful because of a number. I wasn't measuring my success on the impact I was having on the clients that I had. I was measuring it on the number of clients I had in my coaching schedule. Having to redefine that outdated version of success was critical to allow me to move forward. And I believe that was the one thing that happened probably 90 days in working with my coach. That was the breakthrough moment that I needed to stop using somebody else's measuring stick. Goals that maybe once inspired you might not be aligned anymore. I think this comes from your new definition of success. As a new agent, when I was selling real estate, my story of success was number of units sold, GCI, and sales volume. And as I evolved to selling hundreds of homes, my definition of success changed and my goals changed because I was focused on the new definition, not the old. And what was amazing about that was at first I was afraid to do that because I thought if I take my eye off the ball on units, GCI, and revenue, my business might go down. And the exact opposite happened. When I started focusing on the goals that really lit me up, more business showed up than I knew what to do with. And that was part of when I was leading a team. I had more leads than what I knew to do with. You might be chasing something you've outgrown, can be another reason that you feel stuck. You may, again, be using somebody else's definition. The thing that I think happens the most when we have this impression of being stuck is there's a level of resistance that happens. And we might be doing it on an unconscious level, and we might be resisting because our actions aren't in alignment with our current values. So this whole thing goes back to redefining your new success and getting those in alignment with your internal values, and then creating the strategies that support that. Because if my values are here and my actions are over here, not in alignment with my values, I'm going to resist on an unconscious level taking that action because it's not in alignment with what's truly important to me. And so resistance can happen, giving you the feeling that you're stuck. The other thing simply could be is that your next level requires a new definition. Your next level requires you to look at things differently. Your next level requires you to become somebody that you're not yet. And that can mess with people's mind. That's that imposter syndrome. Well, that person who's going to get to that goal is somebody that I'm not right now. And we hold on to that versus embracing the possibility that that's going to be me. When I do these activities, I'm trucking right along to become that exact person that I need to be to get to that goal. Number 4, and this is critical, your environment is reinforcing the wrong patterns. External factors can quietly be holding you back, which then becomes your story of being stuck. The people you're spending time with matters. The conversations you're having matter. I say this often. You're going to grow to the extent of the conversations you have with yourself and with other people. And if your immediate front row or your immediate grouping of people that you spend the most amount of time with are at a certain level of success that is lower than what you want it to be, you must change and invite other people into your world. It's that simple and yet that important. And you're going to find out that sometimes our conversations are about activity versus outcome, and we need to flip that. And that's why I love hanging around with people that think bigger than me. That's why I love hanging around with people that have such audacious goals that I look at them in awe, that I think, my gosh, how brave are you to have that goal? And what it does is it raises my vibration because I realize it's possible. And if it's possible for them, it's possible for me. So what audacious goal do I want to set for myself? And I stop having conversations around activities and I start having conversations around outcome. This is really important. Your brain cannot tell the difference between real and make believe. When I talk about activities, I'm going to do X activity to get me to goal. versus talking about the outcome, the goal, how I'm going to feel once that goal is achieved. It makes things, you're focused on the wrong thing. In my journaling, at least once a week, I write to myself as if it's 6 months from now or 12 months from now. I usually write, it's December 15th of whatever year I'm in, and just say a reflection. Gosh, it's December 15th. I accomplished all of these goals, and this is how I feel. I start living it as if it's done. I give my brain permission to accept it as fact that I've achieved the outcome, and I live in it. And the reason I do that is because the brain views that as the truth. The brain will view that as the reality, and it will partner with you in getting you to that because it already believes it's done. So it starts helping you show up differently. Make sure your conversations are not just focused on activity, that you have conversations around outcome. Get out of urgency, get out of scarcity. I know the first thing that we tend to do when we're not moving forward is get into a mindset or a perception of scarcity. Like if we have an off month, we can allow that to consume us, that this is going to be our next following 12 months, and get our mindset in a place of scarcity. Well, if this continues, I'm not going to make enough money to keep the doors open. If this continues, I'm not going to be able to afford my life. If this continues, I'm going to have to go get a different job. We start to allow ourselves to move into a space of scarcity, and that creates a sense of urgency, and it's an urgency focused on the wrong thing. So pay attention to your thoughts and make sure that your environment, your beliefs are part of your environment, that they're supporting you. Your environment's either going to fuel your growth or maintain comfort, but rarely both. And I'm a firm believer, yes, we need some comfort in our life. I like to operate under the space of discomfort because it's the space of growth. It's the space of making me think differently. The number 5 thing that can be happening when you have this story of being stuck is that you're overcommitted and under focused. Too many priorities versus the right priorities. When we are in a state of scarcity, so maybe our environment's off, maybe our thoughts are off, we start treating everything of the same equal importance. I got to go do this. I got to go do this. I've got to get this done versus what is my true priority. This goes back to that moment of take a pause. Just take a pause and reflect, what am I to learn about what's happening? And start to realign your priorities with the activities that we know will work. Many times we're in this situation, we like to say yes to everything because it makes us feel good. And it can be the thing that creates overcommitment. I find myself doing this often. It's like when I'm feeling kind of crummy, I think, well, if I say yes, I'm helping them out, I'm going to feel better about myself. And I do for a moment, and then I get overcommitted and I get overwhelmed, and I'm not focused on the priorities that are going to move me forward. It's kind of like when you board a plane and they go over the safety instructions, they tell you to put your mask on first before you can help somebody else. You may not be able to say yes to someone else until you've said yes to yourself and you've said yes to your priorities. That's going to be how you get to show up the best version of you and can actually help people in the future, is when you say yes to your priority first. It's not selfish. It's allowing you to stay in a forward momentum, which is going to allow you to have a bigger impact on those people that you come into contact with. I love that. I just love knowing that, hey, my priorities are important and they're going to allow me to do bigger things in life. I always view the impact of my success on the impact of other people. The more successful I am, the more I can do for others. And that's been a really key part of my life, is not thinking, well, gosh, the more successful I am, the more stuff I can get. There's a point where you've got enough stuff. In fact, there's a point where you have way more than what you need. And it falls into that less over more mentality of focus on the priority, eliminate what's not important, and the magic will happen. Focus on the impact outside of you, and the magic will happen. Focus on the priorities. The last thing I want to talk about that can be creating the image of being stuck is you're avoiding the one thing that would actually move you forward. Gosh, I have been guilty of this so many times myself. And it's because your brain wants you to stay comfortable. Remember in the last podcast, we talked about when you do things that are familiar and comfortable, habitual, your brain views it as you're conserving energy because it knows what to do. It doesn't take a lot of effort and a lot of work for the brain to comprehend these new activities. But there's usually just one decision, one conversation that you would have, or one action that you're avoiding that would make all of the difference in the world. I talk a little bit about this and I'm going to share it with you. I remember when I was pitching my idea of the book to agents, and that was really thrilling, right? You're sharing what you want to do, what you want to put out into the world. I wanted to put out into the world that I want to change how the world defines success. And that was really, really exciting. And then I remember the moment that my agent said, okay, I need a chapter. I need to review a couple of chapters to see if we're in alignment and if I want to work with you. And all of a sudden it switched from having to take an action. And I will tell you, my mind went to imposter. Who do I think I am? Oh my God, I'm going to write a chapter and somebody's actually going to read it. And I started avoiding taking action. And I'm very fortunate. I have an amazing coach that I could call. And I said, hey, listen, this is the task I've been assigned, but I'm stuck. I'm resisting doing it. And she simply just said, what is the one thing, the one action that you could take that would make the difference in getting the chapter written? And it was very simple. I just needed to take a step back and think about the journey I wanted to take people on in that chapter. And then the words started to flow. And then I felt comfortable hitting send and submitting to my agent a sample of my work. It was one of the most terrifying moments I've had in a long time because I'm very comfortable and confident as a coach. I'm extremely comfortable and confident writing content for coaching programs. I was extremely uncomfortable submitting a chapter for somebody else to read. Yet that discomfort was the gateway to momentum. Me pushing that send button, the email with the 3 little chapters attached to it, was the gateway to me gaining momentum. It helped redefine everything, helped me connect to my new identity, helped me connect to my vision of changing how the world defines success. And it became much easier to feel confident about submitting future chapters. And then knowing we were going to submit that to the publishing house was the other moment of taking a risk or getting uncomfortable. Sometimes if you don't have a coach, I would invite you to get one. Yet you may just have to ask yourself, what am I avoiding that would change everything if I just did it? What am I not doing? What is the one thing I'm not doing that if I did would make a difference? One of my mentors, Gary Keller, has a book called The One Thing, and he talks about what is the one thing that if you did it would make everything else seem simpler or unnecessary. I'm probably misquoting it, yet that sticks with me. What's just the one thing that if I did would change everything? Embrace this, embrace being stuck, and know that it's a story. It's not your truth. It's really just a signal, not the state that you're in. Do not let it move from the signal to a state. It can happen in a blink if you do not implement what we've talked about. Just know that at times you're going to get misaligned. You're going to get off track. You're going to overextend yourself. You might be avoiding the truth of what needs to be done. It's okay. It's a signal that you just need to take a step back and pay attention. Movement doesn't come necessarily from doing more. It comes from aligning the right activities to take you to the next level. It comes with aligning your new identity, your new story of success, and it's trusting it and living into your future as if it's already happened. Future letters are incredibly important to hack the brain into feeling comfortable taking those actions. Just get honest, get clear, and get focused is probably the way that I could say to move yourself from a state of being stuck to just using it as a signal. We're never really stuck. My old coach used to say this all the time. You're not free. You're not stuck. Move. Do something. Take action. I don't care what it is. Take an action. And that has stuck with me to this day. Write the chapter, hit send. What's the worst thing that could happen? They say no to you? Okay, move on. Rewrite the chapter. Do whatever you need to do. Trust in yourself that it's a signal and not a state. All right, team, make it a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you must come check out the Mindset Architect Group Coaching Program. It's our monthly program where we explore the power of your mindset, help you identify what you truly want in business and life, and then help you reach those goals. Come check us out at rethinkcoaching.com/group-program. That's rethinkcoaching.com/group-program. We'll see you there.